Hello and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Orlando. I'm Linnea Nelson and I serve on the worship team. Today we gather in remembrance of the trauma at Pulse 5 years ago. As Unitarian Universalists, our hearts were broken, but still we have hope, as Reverend Rebecca Parker shares with these words. Even when our hearts are broken by our own failure or the failure of others cutting into our lives, even when we have done all we can and life is still broken, there is a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will. For more information about our congregation, go to orlandouu.org or email WelcomeTeam@orlandouu.org. After service today, we'll gather for fellowship to chat for about 20 minutes. Remember to use the new link and passcode that we introduced last week and that we'll continue to use. One of the breakout rooms is the Welcome Center, a great place for new friends to find out more about us. We'll repeat this slide at the end of worship. All are welcome. And also this Saturday, all are welcome to come to campus and celebrate Reverend Sam's ministry with us as he heads to his next church. Here's more information from the transition team with their thank you.
Hello. We are the transition team for Reverend Sam. My name is Ellen and I've served as chair of this group.
I'm Kathy, and I wanted to remind you about the opening welcome we had when Sam arrived 2 years ago. We all met and created our own sandwiches and talked about the variety of ways in which we are fed by our congregation.
I'm Joanne, and I wanted to remind you that we had a history wall event, actually several events, back before the pandemic, where we gathered to remember and review our history and help us in planning for the future.
Hi, I'm Charles. Please join us at 11:30, between 11:30 and 1 at the Labyrinth to wish Sam on a good journey and thank him for everything that he's brought to us.
So on behalf of the transition team, you will see in the weekly announcement all the information there is about our big event. It's for all ages. There'll be activities for all ages. Saturday, June 19th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Labyrinth. Hope to see you there.
Thank you to the transition team for sharing heartfelt thanks to Reverend Sam on behalf of 1U Orlando. Later on next Saturday, in the evening at 7 p.m. is a General Assembly pre-party on Zoom. You can learn more about GA, our national gathering of congregations. Email Leadership Development at 1uleadershipdevelopment@gmail.com for a link. I love being part of this worship community that gave so much to our greater community after Pulse. I give to this community in part so that we can continue to serve our neighbors in Orlando. So if you'd like to make an offering to support the many ministries of this congregation, go to orlandouu.org and click the donate button in the upper right corner. Send a text or send a check. And another way we practice generosity is in sharing the plate with a community partner. In June, that's the Orlando LGBTQ History Museum. Help to celebrate Pride this month by supporting this important work. It's always great to gather together. Let's worship.
El amor in un rincón, pero busca el amor, ni placer ni pasión, el lo que hace al otro bien. Busca el amor en ti, si multiplicas y lo repartís. Busca el amor en ti, solo el que ama puede ser feliz. Busca el amor en ti, se multiplica si lo repartís. Busca el amor en ti, solo el que ama puede ser feliz. Busca el amor en ti, en ti. Registra tu camaleón cuando cambia el color del corazón y testea la flor, un pétalo del sol, el amor, lo que hace al otro bien. Busca el amor en ti, se multiplica si lo repartís. Busca el amor en ti, solo el que ama puede ser feliz. Busca el amor en ti, se multiplica si lo repartís. Busca el amor en ti, solo el que ama puede ser feliz. Busca el amor en ti, en ti.
These words from John Burens and Rebecca Ann Parker call us into worship together. Hope rises. It rises from the heart of life here and now, beating with joy and sorrow. Hope longs. It longs for good to be affirmed, for justice and love to prevail, for suffering to be alleviated, and for life to flourish in peace. Hope remembers. It remembers the dreams of those who have gone before and reaches for connection with them across the boundary of death. Hope acts. It acts to bless, to protest, and to repair. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Joanne Waitito, and this is my husband, John Rayox. Unitarian Universalists light a chalice at the beginning of worship to set aside this time as sacred time. Please say with me our familiar words. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share.
Today we're reading Love by Stacey McAnulty. Love is a fancy dinner. Love needs special presents. And designer greeting cards. Love calls for bouquets of flowers. And must have the finest chocolate. Love sounds like poetry and has a beautiful melody. Love comes in the shape of a heart. And sparkles like diamonds. Love happens at first sight and needs the tightest hugs. Love deserves to be shouted from the rooftops. Because nothing else matters without love.
This poem is called Pulse, and it's for our loved ones in Orlando who we didn't get to meet. I was going to see you. I was going to dance in the same place with you someday. I was going to pretend not to notice how you and your friends smiled when you saw me and my partner trying to cumbia to bachata, but I was going to feel more free anyway because you were smiling and we were together and you had your stomach out and you felt beautiful in your sweat. I was going to smile when I walked by. I was going to hug you the first time a friend of a friend introduced us. I was going to compliment your shoes instead of writing you a love poem. I was going to smile at you every time I saw you and struggle to remember your name. We were going to sing together. We were going to belt out Selena. I was going to mispronounce everything except for amor and ay. I was going to covet your confidence and your bracelet. I was going to be grateful for the sight of you. I was going to scream, yes, at nothing in particular, at everything especially, meaning you beyond who I knew you to be. I was going to see you in hallways and be too shy to say hello. You were going to come to the workshop. You were going to sign up for the workshop and not come. You were going to translate the webinar even though my politics seemed out there. We were going to sign up for creating change the same day and be reluctant about it for completely different reasons. We were going to watch the keynotes and laugh at completely different times. I was going to hold your hand in a big activity about the intimacy of strangers, about the strangeness of needing prayer. We were going to get the same automated voice message when we complained that it was not what it should have been. We were going to be standing in the same line for various overpriced drinks during a shift change. I was going to breathe loudly so you would notice me. You were going to compliment my hair. It isn't fair because we were going to work to Beyonce and Rihanna and the Rihannas and Beyoncés to come and the Beyoncés and Rihannas after that. We were going to not drink enough water and stay out later than our immune systems could handle. We were going to sit in traffic in each other's blind spots, listening to top 40 songs that trigger queer memories just outside the scope of marketing predictions. We were going to get old, and I was going to wonder about the hint of a tattoo I could see under your sleeve. I was going to blink and just miss the fought-for laughter lines around your liner-loved eyes. I was going to go out for my birthday, but I didn't, and you did. We were going to be elders just because we were still around, and I was going to listen to you on a panel we didn't feel qualified for and hear you talk about your guilt for still being alive when so many of your friends were taken by suicide, by AIDS, by racist police, and jealous ex-lovers, and poverty, and no access to health care, and how you had a stable job you suffered at until the weekend, how you avoided the drama and only went to the club at Pride, and so here you were, with no one to dance with anymore. I was going to see you and forget you, and only remember you in my hips, and how my smile came easier than clenching my teeth eventually, and how I finally learned whatever it is I still haven't learned yet. I was going to hear you laugh and not know why and not care. Our ancestors fought for a future, and we were both going to be there until we weren't. And so I don't know if it would hurt more to lose you later, after knowing you. I don't know if it would hurt more to know you died on your own day, by your own hands, or any of the other systems that stalk you and me and ours forever. I only know the pain that I am having, and that you are not here to share it. You are not here to bear it. You were going to pass me a candle at the next vigil. But now, I am pulse, and now, you are flame.
And now a time of mindfulness, of meditation and prayer. We begin, as always, with the hearing of the joys and sorrows in our congregation and in the world. In our congregation this week, Rhonda and Richard report that Richard's father, Larry, in New York, has returned to the hospital with pneumonia. Richard and Karina are leaving for New York to assist. We honor all the many individuals in Orlando this week who have remembered the Pulse tragedy in so many diverse ways in our community. We especially honor those who have suffered from gun violence, either in Pulse or in any of the other, unfortunately, far too many shootings across the country. And amid all this, we affirm hope amid the sorrow still experienced by so many. And of course, we honor the unspoken sorrows of our hearts, and we know that the light of the sacred shines into the dark and broken places of our lives and all life. A prayer adapted from William Cleary. Holy fire at the heart of mystery. There are losses in life that break our hearts. Losses come, tragedy happens. Our efforts seem in vain at times. Be near, Holy Wisdom, and strengthen our hearts, but above all, enable us to befriend the perplexing world we have, along with all its imperfection, illusion, and disappointment. Persuade our hearts to love the world and to work for the healing of the world, so that we can walk its paths responsibly and courageously. And so we are mindful of the sufferings in our community and in our world. And we pray for all those, especially now, who are hurting in any manner of body, mind, or spirit. For these and for all, we pray for a greater sense of peace, fulfillment, health, vigor, relationship, abundance and sufficiency in all things, and above all things, healing. Now, with the private meditations of our hearts, we enter the silence in the communion of names. And so it is. Amen. Blessed be.
On a warm June evening, I'm bursting at the seams. The year is 2009, and I'm turning 18. Old enough to dance wherever I want. With back-breaking, gyrating, smooth as a swan in a glitter bath, punk rock, hip-hop, bachata, poise and sass. My friends knew where to take me. Somewhere we could be free from our parents' living rooms and standards spoken and unseen. Somewhere I'd see a dancer fall down into a split, reaching to the heavens, pulling all its colors to his chest, whirling his body round to shiver out the stress. His dark skin shining, fingers grinding, conducting rhythm to soar through the room of moonlight lovers who never knew freedom before. On a warm June morning, I'm dripping Micanopy heat. The year is 2016. I'm surrounded by antiques. My partner is in the bathroom, holding out his phone with the silent reverence of a newly minted funeral home. The headline can't be near. That happened anywhere but here. On the TV, far away, to other people and other places. A change of channel should erase this. Orlando. Pulse. I dive at my phone, rushing to remember anyone who could be there at all. I text, I call, I text, I call. Please, please, tell me you're alive. My prom date from high school, who danced until he ripped his pants. My shy friend from college, who loved baseball and romance. Pretty people tracing kisses on his lips before slipping out of sight. acquaintances barely remembered by the end of the night. That bad boy bar back quoting Oscar Wilde plays. Darn, I forgot about those days. My best friends, my neighbor, my ex, they all got the same text. Oh my God, I can't take this. Please, please, please don't die. I counted everyone I knew, and the news tallied theirs in a race against denial, seemingly absurd. My theater friend said he ended the evening early, going home after Southern nights, following a bicker in the back of an Uber ride. The words, "everything happens for a reason," never seemed like they were a lie. What could we do when the dead had friends too, and family, and lovers, and light? How could we respond in a way that's just, in a way that's right? Good thing we always knew what sacred really was. We cradled it with candles and with flowers over the names of angels sprawled across the lawn. Good thing we always knew what faith was, knowing love would triumph every wrong. So we drowned the world in color and reached for every hand, painting a strength and unity in every single land. On a warm June evening, we can see the rainbow's other side. The year is 2021, and hope is turning 5. Old enough to dance wherever it wants.
Today's anthem is Pulse by Melissa Etheridge. She wrote it in the few hours right after the Pulse tragedy. She was on tour and Rolling Stone was with her and got a quote where she said, "There's just something so poetic about the word pulse. Here we are, a gay people and LGBTQ people, dealing with issues of loving who we want to love. Don't we realize that we all are the same? We all have a pulse." Everybody's got a pain inside, fundamental wounds they fight to hide. I am just like them, 'cause everybody's got a pulse. I've lived in a world that wants my soul, tells me who I love it won't condole. But I don't believe it, I cannot conceive it. Everybody's got a pulse. I am human, I am love, and my heart beats with my blood. Love will always win, 'cause underneath the skin, everybody's got a pulse. Once again I hang my head to cry. I can't even find the reasons why they died. Will we find the answer blowing in the wind? Everybody's got a pulse. I am human, I am love, and my heart beats within my blood. Love will always win underneath the skin. Everybody's got a pulse. I am human, I am love, and my heart beats inside my blood. Love will always win, 'cause underneath the skin, everybody's got a pulse. Oh, I am human, I am love, and my heart beats in my blood. Love will always win, 'cause underneath my skin, everybody's got a pulse. Oh, I am human, I am love, and my heart beats in my blood. Love will always win, 'cause underneath the skin, everybody's got a pulse. I am human, I am love, and my heart beats with the fire in my blood. Love will always win, 'cause underneath the skin, everybody's got a pulse. Everybody's got a pulse. Everybody's got a pulse.
Good morning, friends. I'm sitting here this morning with some friends of ours, the Reverend Kierstin Homblette Allen, our affiliate minister, whom everyone knows well, and Marco Quiroga, founder and executive director of the Contigo Fund. Welcome to you, Marco, especially, and just say a little bit about your work here in Orlando to let people know what you do.
Hey everyone, my pronouns are he, him, and él, Marco Antonio, and I am from Orlando, Florida. I grew up here after my family immigrated from Peru. We landed here when I was 3 years old. My mother was a survivor of domestic violence, and she fled that violent situation, and because of that, my family became undocumented. And so I lived here in Orlando undocumented with my undocumented family all that time. And I got involved in the undocumented youth movement here in Florida. It was undocumented Latinas and other undocumented queer or LGBTQ undocumented folks that really got me involved in the movement and gave me a sense of purpose and voice and power. And that's kind of like the trajectory my life took in. I started working in movement work in DC around immigration reform in New York. And then the morning of the Pulse tragedy, that's where I was. I had deep connections to Pulse. It was the first nightclub I went to when I was 17 with my sister, with a fake ID, of course. Being undocumented, that's how we had to roll. And it was the place that I came out to her with, and it was also the place when I was experiencing homelessness as a teen that I built a chosen family to support me through that experience when I first came out as queer. And so it's a very personal space. There was many friends who are either hospitalized or directly impacted by the shooting. I bought a plane ticket, flew back 2 days after the shooting, and I've been here ever since. And that's what's led to Contigo Fund. I supported a community needs assessment. There was an identified need for a vehicle for long-term change here in Orlando, supporting LGBTQ communities of color that were directly impacted by the shooting. And Contigo has been doing that work over for the past 5 years now.
Good, good. Well, speaking of the morning of the shooting, I was at home in Dallas and just read the news in my morning feed and was shocked. But I had no relationship at that point with Orlando. I never knew that I would be serving here. Kierstin, tell us how that morning was for you when you discovered the news, given your background, because I know you grew up in this congregation.
Yeah. So I also grew up in Orlando, like you, Marco. And left after I graduated from high school, and I was gone for about 20 years. Back here periodically because my family is here. And I was living in Denver with my wife the morning of the Pulse massacre. And we were really devastated because that club had meant a lot to us too. That was one of the first places that I ever danced with her before we even started dating, and knew a number of people, kind of as you're saying, for whom it was really a home and a family. And so that felt, I think any mass shooting in our country makes us feel really sad and anxious and concerned. And this one just hit a lot closer to home because of those connections. It was hard to not be here to watch a lot of the memorializing unfold here and to be there. So I completely understand why you flew right home to be with your people.
Unitarian Universalist churches are typically well known to be supportive of LGBTQ concerns. And given just the incredible tragedy of Pulse, it still is rated as one of the worst mass shootings in United States history, affecting especially the Latinx community, since that happened to be Latin night on that tragedy. What's your thinking about the place of religious communities in the ongoing work of affirming civil rights for LGBTQ folks, Latinx folks, inclusion as a deep spiritual practice?
So I would want to personalize it a little bit because I grew up in a faith community here in Orlando. It was this all Spanish-speaking church, principally Puerto Rican community, and it was in Seminole County. The experience I had in that church felt very isolating, honestly. This is pre-Pulse, pre-2016. I reflect back on my experience of coming out to my mother, experiencing homelessness, running away, and eventually reconnecting back with my family, but with the condition that I had to go through counseling, corrective counseling with my pastor if I were to stay in my home. So a form of conversion therapy. And so that was my experience as a queer person, and in my faith community, which I grew up in since I was 6 years old. It was our chosen family in many ways because as undocumented people, we leaned on our church family for support. And my mother, who was an undocumented mother of 4 kids, all by herself, single mother, she really relied on them, and that became our home, and it became our sanctuary in many ways. And so that sanctuary in that period of time for me was robbed. And so affirming congregations, I think one of the things that the Pulse tragedy really uncovered is that no faith community or congregation can be neutral. Neutrality is a falsehood. Either you take action and you speak up, in particular for the most marginalized people in your community, or you're part of the problem. And in response to Pulse, we had many faith leaders who, from what they, I suppose, would consider a neutral stance on LGBTQ issues or unaffirming congregations, non-affirming congregations, rally or bring up, kind of prop up vigils and prayers, but without the full understanding of the stigma and wall that exists and historic trauma that exists between faith communities and LGBTQ people, and particularly marginalized LGBTQ people of color that very much lack access to support. And in that, I think in particular, the Latinx community, faith community, it was a difficult conversation because of the conversation that they've never had within their community. And then the role that affirming faith leaders and congregations and communities have is to bring those folks along in the long term. I think that we've delved in deep and have created strong connections and roots amongst affirming congregations, faith leaders, and communities with the broader LGBTQ community, with communities of color, and being able to show up in really intentional ways. But that work needs to be long-term. And one thing that we learned is that compassion fatigue sets in. The new normal starts to set in, and opportunities are lost to really shape hearts and minds to be welcoming of our full community, to be affirmingly in loving, radically in love and embracing of people, not just to tolerate them and not just to accept them, but to completely embrace who they are. And so I think we have still a very long journey ahead of us here in Orlando, and particularly in faith communities of color in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that I would say, Reverend Sam, about the response of our congregation, I think that was possible because we have been working for a very long time on better understanding sexuality, better understanding the lives of queer people and trans people, less so trans people, let's be honest, right? Mostly gay and lesbian folks. And that groundwork over many decades is what enabled that quick response after Pulse. That there wasn't all of this perseverating about how do we feel about this issue, or is this going to go against our beliefs to help people, or and that's the kind of work what makes me think about what you're saying, Marco, that it's not just after something terrible happens that we start to think about it, but it's the work that we can do over the long term that lays the groundwork for us to be able to respond well when tragedy happens or when wonderful things happen and we need to have a response. And so it makes me think about how we've done, I think, relatively well. We still have some work to do on gender diversity, I think, in our congregation. But this is one question I think that I have about our congregation's work around race and issues of racism, that we haven't done that decades-long kind of work in the same way that we have around LGBTQ issues. And so I'm really happy to hear you say that, Marco, because I think that can really reinforce for us about the importance of doing that day-to-day learning and conversation and reaching out and relationship building, so that when people in our community need us, we're ready to respond with love and compassion and not panic and anxiety.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We've had what we call a welcoming congregation in our association for, ever since I've been in our associations from the late 80s, and which is a good thing, but it strikes me that I think I was looking at that work as sort of passive, that it's nice that we accept people, and then I learned, the difference in acceptance and then affirmation. But Pulse sort of demonstrates how that background work you do, that congregations can do, you can be ready when the world needs you.
Well, that just makes me think about this other wondering that I have, Marco. I'd be curious for your perspective on this. So in my experience, immediately after Pulse, there was a lot of rainbow flags put up everywhere and a lot of verbal support for the LGBTQ and Latinx communities. The city did all kinds of stuff. Businesses put up little stickers on their doors about this is a welcoming space and all of that kind of stuff, which I think is wonderful. But I hear what you're saying about sort of fatigue sets in over time. And so I'm curious about your perspective about how much of that support was deep and how much of that support was a momentary reaction that hasn't lasted. I'm quite disturbed by what we're seeing these days from our Florida legislature and from our governor on issues related to both LGBT community support and issues of immigration and issues of voting rights. And so it makes me feel like that was all to feel really good, but it didn't sink in deep enough to continue to support these communities 5 years later. And so I'm just curious what your experience has been on that.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. The tragedy uncovered a lot during that period of time. I mean, it was the worst mass incident of violence in modern U.S. history at that point. And then there became, following the tragedy, there became this normalizing around mass shootings, climate disasters, one thing after the other. It goes back to the point that we were talking about before. It's not only wise to build connections and build these deep roots in the communities that are most impacted. It's a reality of what you all need to prepare for in terms of the future, because as we move along, 1 week to the next, we're seeing 2-3 mass shootings a week now. And most the folks who are most at risk are going to be Black and brown, are going to be queer and trans, are going to be folks living in poverty, are going to be people in the South, are going to be individuals who are most likely to be also experience climate disasters and other man-made disasters as well. And so it behooves us to just like acknowledge, recognize, and say that, we have to be prepared, because we live in a society where racism is entrenched, homophobia and transphobia is entrenched, and it's emboldened. And it's emboldened on a national stage, it's emboldened here in our state capital. And folks are easily driven to that mentality around division and hate, because it's a winning issue for some folks in political positions of power. And it behooves us to be that counter message, that message of radical love and embracing of all people, because that's how we've made it as Orlando. Even though there is entrenchment, we've created a sanctuary here to buffer against the division and hate that has been spread across our state by political leaders and across our nation, in terms of like being more affirming and welcoming and increasing safety for our undocumented community members, to responding to the calls for Black Lives Matter and community alternatives to policing of Black and brown communities, and showing up respectfully for our trans siblings here in Orlando, and making sure that we're lifting up their flags, we're elevating their voices, and that we're building their leadership. That's what makes Orlando unique. That's the difference that I see here in our city. But we have to be consistently vigilant, because the entrenchment, it has a way of pushing us backwards if we become complacent. We have to always be on the front lines, and we have to always be the individuals pushing the envelope forward.
Right. Yeah. Amen to all of that. It makes me think about when we first moved back here in 2017, we were looking for a pediatrician for our baby. And we went to one, and they had a sticker on their door about this is a safe space with a rainbow flag and that kind of stuff. We were like, oh my gosh, awesome. And then all of the paperwork was mother and father, mother and father, mother and father, and it was like, the intentions are good, but what this sticker means has not sunk in fully. And that makes me think a little bit about things like Black Lives Matter banners or trans flags, where we want to signal our acceptance and our support, but it also means that has to trickle into our systems in the way that we operate in our community, because otherwise it just becomes a feel-good thing for us and not really a help to the community.
Yeah, it's a misconception around solidarity. A lot of folks believe that solidarity can be achieved through words and displays, but solidarity requires action. And a meaningful, intentional action that builds community and builds relationship and builds movement and power for those who are often left powerless. And so that's what true solidarity means to me. And I think what Orlando is really special in terms of the solidarity that really exists here in our community is really beautiful.
That sounds like a good place to kind of begin to wind up. Action and solidarity for an unfolding future, maybe. Where briefly do we find hope in that future, given the reality of Pulse and the reality of so many tragic situations? Where is hope?
For me, I think back on a younger Marco who was experiencing homelessness and couldn't even access shelter because he was undocumented. A younger Marco who didn't have the acceptance of his family. And I think about the community younger Marco lived in here in Orlando. And how little opportunity and access existed for me during that period of time. And I think about our community today, and I think about the vibrant grassroots movements that are led by and for LGBTQ leaders of color, Black leaders, Latinx leaders, API leaders, responding to this growing divide. This division that's really rooted in bigotry and hatred, but here building community that's affirming, welcoming, and safe for everyone, and that's what gives me hope, is that a younger me has opportunity today. I wouldn't have to leave to seek opportunity elsewhere. I could find it here in my hometown. And that's the work that we do with the Contigo Fund, is building that opportunity and building that power for those that are most marginalized, so that they don't have to leave our community, that they can find a sense of belonging and purpose here.
Great.
I just want to say how grateful I am for the work that you all are doing, Marco. It's so important, and it makes this community better for all of us. And I said that I grew up here, and I think a lot has changed since I was a kid. I remember I was at the Pride Parade, well, not last year, obviously, it must have been 2 years ago. And there was a group marching with a GSA from my high school, which I would have never thought that could happen based on what my experience was like in high school. And I think you're right that things have really shifted, and because of the work of you and so many others who are deeply grounded here. So thank you.
And the work of everyone here and in our faith communities, everyone has a role in a bigger picture around social justice. And so, we're all in this together, in the chosen movement family together.
Yes, we're all in this together. And that's our hope. Great. Thank you both for this. This was a fabulous conversation.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide. and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
On this day again, my friends, remember, we haven't just been to church, we are the church. And when the church is the church, it is nothing less, it is nothing more, it is nothing other than a house of healing and of hope amid all that can happen this week as you return to all that you do in life. Be the church, be healing, be hope. Go in grace. Amen.